All right, we're climbing through the weeds, and that means we're radio entrepreneurs. My name is Jeffrey Davis, and that also means that my co-pilot for this wonderful trip is the one, the only Walter Sullivan from the law office of Walter J. Sullivan, Jr.
And this is Major Taunt to Ground Control.
Yeah. Was Senior an attorney too?
No, he was smart. He was a politician.
Oh, boy.
Is that really a smarter choice?
He's a politician too, believe me.
I'm Irish. The only job we can pass down in our family is political jobs. The other problem you run into is that 1978, in the court system, we made nepotism illegal. We elect Mitt Romney, and he gets rid of patronage. What the heck's an Irish kid supposed to do for a job in Boston?
I can't believe you're
If you
talking
can't
about this
rely
on
a
the air.
relative or-
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe you should cut that part. No.
Yeah, I can't believe you just went off into that tangent. We might have to edit that out because we don't want to ruin the next interview for Mitzi Hollenbeck, partner at Citrin Cooperman. Welcome.
That's correct. Thank you for having me here.
And you're all about compliance, right?
That's what accountants do.
Right.
It's all
and
about
he's out of compliance.
We'll try to keep them in line.
Okay.
That's
good.
what a CPA is supposed to do,
That's
right?
what the In the Weeds show is all about. So why don't you tell us about your firm?
Sure. So Citrin Cooperman is the 23rd largest CPA firm in the United States. So we have a little over 1,100 employees. We have offices all up and down the East Coast. We have an office in Los Angeles, one in London. We have one in India, one in Grand Cayman, of course, because we have a wealth management arm. So, I'm actually the co-founder and practice leader of the Cannabis Advisory Services practice at Citrin Cooperman. We have about 30 people that work in my group now, and we work with clients all across the United States. We have multi-state operators, we have in-state operators, we have international companies in Spain, we have companies in China, we have companies in Canada, we have, companies all across, which are really getting into either CBD, hemp, marijuana products, licensed marijuana products, those who invest into marijuana companies and things like that. But we're a full service CPA firm, so we do everything soup to nuts. I'm not only a CPA, I'm also a CFE, which is a certified fraud examiner. So I also do litigation and dispute advisory services, which of course I've been interested to see how cannabis and fraud have started to come together, which certainly is,
And you should have signed up to as that's what the Cannabis Control Commission's looking for.
Oh, let's talk about. Give us a little
may say
cannabis.
that maybe I have. So we'll see where that goes.
Can you give us a cannabis fraud story? Because I think that's the kind of viral story we like to hear about.
Sure. I can give you plenty of those fraud stories. So, we can talk about what's happening even with the funding, in the cannabis industry. So there are certainly, in this industry, there's plenty of people that are just trying to take advantage of other people, whether or not they're just hanging their shingles out there to pretend.
Like other business industries.
But in this one, there's an extra edge to it, really, because I think the problem is that there's such a hype from people in the whole, quote unquote, gold rush phenomenon of trying to make money very quickly, that what's happening is that there's just valuations thrown upon valuations thrown upon valuations. So people are pretty much blindly putting their money into a lot of these companies, and they're not understanding, the basic economics of the industry or the company itself. And, in a lot of instances, what we've seen have been people who have offered to fund companies where they're looking to fund their cultivation facility for maybe $10 or $15 million. But, in order to get your funding, you give us the first $100,000 and we'll release you $1 million. And, you start to see this, you have to pay to play type thing just to get funding in the industry. So that's a pretty common theme that we're seeing in a scheme that's out there of people just trying to go after the gullible individuals that have applied for a license, but maybe didn't have their funding lined up, by the time they actually applied for the license. So that's kind of happening at the local level, where we're seeing some of these companies just come in there that are trying to just defraud those who are actually trying to get licenses.
The Secretary of State has gone after a couple.
Exactly. So it was good to see that. When I started to see that there's a focus on that, it's good to see. The other issues really relate to, some of these overvaluations, that you start to see, especially with those who are being paid for in Canadian stock. And I think one of the biggest issues that I wish people would understand, which of course CPAs are well versed in, GAAP and generally accepted accounting principles, but also in international financial reporting standards, IFRS, because I think one of the biggest issues that people don't understand is on Canadian companies that have gone public in this industry, there's something called an agricultural bloom value of the inventory. And what happens is that in United States financial statements, you value your inventory at cost or lower of cost or market. So whatever it takes to actually grow cannabis, in terms of direct labor, indirect labor, overhead, things like that, that's what your inventory is valued at. But in Canada, that's not what your inventory is valued at. Your inventory is valued at the market rate. So what happens is that in the change between cost to market rate, that bloom value actually goes through your income statement. So people don't know that. If you look at a financial statement of a Canadian company or publicly traded company that's reporting under IFRS, you have to understand that a component of their income or their revenue that they might be showing is actually just based upon the fact that maybe they created more inventory at the end of the year. So, I mean, there's things like that that people just don't know about. And then, you have people looking to raise funds and private placement memorandums, and they're putting them out there, and you have to be an accredited investor, which really just means that you have a lot of money, not that you're actually sophisticated in terms of understanding what you're getting into. And there's risks that abound. There's ridiculous
I
risks.
think one of the things you find is people think there's such a thing as family and friends. We can go raise money from our families and friends, and you run into an issue because it's not till everything falls apart that it hits the fan.
Bernie Madoff had plenty of family and friends, right? I mean, that's really when you look at it.
I remember when people tried to introduce me to him.
Well, and that's the thing is
I'm making so much money, this guy in New York.
Yeah, and it was so exclusive, and that's why the hype was there. And
Yeah,
I mean, it's not that different. And so if you really look, too, at the valuations of some of these companies and going for $1 billion, I see numbers in these companies, and I see what the actual results will be, and people tend to forget what the demographics and the economics and, the limited licenses versus the unlimited license states and what's going to happen to the economy. I just always say buyer beware.
And I think you're going to, you saw that in Colorado.
Absolutely.
You are potentially going to see something similar here later. It depends on how it grows.
Exactly. 400 licenses in the queue right now.
So you're sitting back saying, how does that play out? So you're not a fly-by-night company. I mean, you've been in business a long time. How did the conversation go to say, let's look at doing this industry?
Yeah, so it was actually pretty interesting. So one thing that's unique about Citrin Cooperman, well, everybody says they're an entrepreneurial firm. Our firm was actually founded by seed money from The Who, the band, because Joel Cooperman.
That really fits really good into cannabis.
Yeah,
down the road.
so Joel Cooperman and Niall Citrin, 40 years ago, this is our 40th anniversary right now of Citrin Cooperman, out of an apartment in New York City, they were doing work for The Who, and what happened was they decided they were going to go and start their own firm. So they started Citrin Cooperman, and what happened was that they had seed money from The Who, and then, Yes was the next client, and that's part of our history. So we always say we're the firm that was founded on rock and roll. So
It's perfect.
What happened
Tommy,
was...
can you hear me?
Yeah. So I went to...
That was a good, I like that.
Thank you.
So I went to Joel Cooperman, and I sat down with him, and this was about almost 2 years ago at this point, where I said, I've been involved in local government because I'm the selectman of the board of selectmen, the chairman of the board of selectmen.
Don't forget that.
In Lakeville, Massachusetts, town of 11,000 people. And
Nice
so
golf course.
There's plenty of nice golf courses.
You're all
4 of
over the
them.
place today.
I didn't have my meds.
This is not a Rorschach test. It's not really associating
what's
Walter.
scary is that I'm totally following it.
Yes,
it's kind
I
of how
know.
my brain
Well, that's
fires
'cause
off
you're working
random
for the-
things
you know,
at the
I get nervous
same
talking to
time.
me.
That's because you're working for a cannabis, department, that started off as a rock and roll,
Right.
firm.
So yeah, I sat down with the CEO and I said, what would it take for me to get formal approval through the executive committee to formally launch a cannabis advisory services practice? And he looked at me and said, I don't know
Yeah,
why you
man.
haven't done it already. So that was the green light really to kind of create the practice, even though we had been working in the industry for a number of years, just we didn't have a formal practice in it. So we had companies that were investing into cannabis companies. We had some of the ATCs, that existed already, and some of, the operators that were in existence, medical operators. So we had been working with them, but we never formally launched the practice till I got there and said, let's do it. So,
I didn't get a chance to say this because you guys were, hot into some extraneous topic. We're speaking with Mitzi Hollenbeck, partner at Citrin Cooperman. Mitzi, what do you like best about working in the cannabis industry? What do you like worst?
Okay. Well, that's a very good question. I mean, probably what I really enjoy, it's kind of a best and worst case scenario, is the fact that everybody works all the time. I mean, people are really enthusiastic about this industry, and that's probably the best part about it. You're working with, people who are on the cutting edge of a brand new industry, and I don't know when we'll ever see another industry and the birth of an industry ever in our lifetime. So there's so many different nuances in the industry, and you have to be able to absorb a lot of information pretty quickly, and you have to be willing to adapt and be flexible. And so you're constantly kind of working all the time. So that's also the downside of the industry, is that you're constantly working all
Yeah.
the time.
Okay.
We just completed, working with clients, a number of applications. The Missouri application deadline was last week. Well, it actually got extended till Monday. But
Okay.
we submitted.
What's the worst?
Well, it's kind of the same thing, right? I mean, you're trying
Yeah.
to balance your life and your family, and how are you going to really be able to do all of this when you're working all the time? Because your clients demand attention. And in this industry, it's kind of funny because you don't hear from clients for maybe a month, and then all of a sudden, it's a fire drill. So there's a lot of that kind of like put
Yeah.
down, pick up immediately because, oh, by the way, our New Jersey application deadline's tomorrow. Where is this? And well, you just gave it to me.
Before you go, I'm going to try to get you in trouble.
It's kind of easy to do.
I have a family member that was a criminal lawyer. Used to be on retainer with some high-end prostitutes, and he used to tell me that they wanted to pay.
How does
in,
this relate
that
to me?
They wanted to pay in trade. Did you ever have a cannabis company that wanted to pay in trade?
I did, yeah. And it
See?
was right, but it was funny. It was one of my Rhode Island clients, and he's like, will you take product? I'm like, no. I'm like, and he's like, will you take cash? I said, no.
Right.
we don't
Highly
operate that way.
regulated
So,
industry.
Exactly. So
It says in God we
For a
trust.
national accounting firm.
right.
Right.
Well, Rhode Island's a different animal too. So it's just a different.
You're not that far from
environment.
Rhode Island.
No, and I actually work out of our Providence office now too.
Oh, I love
so-
Providence. All
So
right.
It is a brand new industry, but at the same token, with what you do, there's twists in it that allow you to serve a client much better.
Exactly. I mean,
I'm going to have to cut both of you off. We've reached the end
problem.
of our time. Sorry, Walter. We're going to have you back again.
okay.
We want to have you
Should we
back
talk
again.
about weed?
And we'll have you talk about weed. But we have been speaking with Mitzi Hollenbeck. Mitzi, if someone's looking to get hold of you, how would they do that?
You can just look at our website, www.citrincooperman.com. Come find us.
Well, you know what? Walter brought you in, and clearly you're a great guest. We're going to have you back again.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks
Great.
for having me,
How's,
guys.
how's Brian Coffey